dudes, how you doing? I hope you're having a damn great day. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we will be discussing how you can replicate Luis Enrique's MSN 2014-15 tactics. Of course, this is a side that won the treble. Obviously, that was the Champions League, the La Liga title, as well as the Copa del Rey. I will also say this. There is a storm happening in the background, so if the mic does pick up anything, I apologize. But we will be talking about how you can replicate a very efficient set of tactics. Of course, we will be discussing the defensive setup, of course, with the likes of Messi dropping a bit deeper, Neymar and Suárez standing slightly high up the field, waiting for the counter. Of course, they were very, very, very prolific on the break, and more so, this is more or less what the defensive structure will look to try and create, as well as the offensive, I want to say, structure and system as well. More so just to try and get those attacking players into the correct areas, especially when you are trying to attack a lesser side. So more so how you can try and break down a deep block. So we will be discussing all three of these things in this video. If you can, hit that like button down below. Subscribe if you are new. That would be absolutely appreciated. But let's hop on into the goddamn video. So, taking a look at the formation at hand, it is a 4-3-3 holding. I've made no structural changes to it whatsoever. Therefore, it is one goalkeeper, two centre-backs, two full-backs, one DM, two central midfielders, two wingers, and then, of course, one striker. So, taking a look at the tactics. Now, I think the best tactical vision that suits this side going forward is wing play. Of course, you might say, well, tiki-taka makes the most sense. They had the likes of Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets, and so on. But with this MSN system, these tactics, they more or less favored the forwards, and trying to get the ball into the forwards would make them more effective. Therefore, you couldn't have the dominant midfield three having most of the possession. You needed the likes of Messi and Neymar and Suárez all in possession of the ball. Therefore, more times than not, the forwards would have more or less, oh sorry, not the forwards, the midfield would have been bypassed, getting the ball into the forwards a lot faster. At the same time, you would have the likes of Dani Alves and Jordi Alba making those overlapping runs, supplying a lot of the width down either flank. So therefore, a lot of the attack would come from those wider areas, leading me to believe that wing play is a best or better suited tactical vision over the likes of tiki-taka. As for the defense and the defensive style, it's set to press after possession loss. Obviously looking to try and win the ball back very aggressively. All three of the front three would aggressively press the opposition if they have lost the ball, looking to try and turn it over very quickly, and then obviously look to try and lead it to a goal scoring opportunity. As for the team width, however, I've set it to 50, more so creating that man v man type situation. Very seldom did this team use a zonal marking type system. They were quite happy to make sure that each individual has their particular player, and therefore they would make sure that that player was being more or less counted upon or made non-effective. As for the depth, however, of course, you are going to still be playing a possession-based brand of football. Don't think because you're not playing tiki-taka and you're playing wing play that it's just going to be fast breaks and whatnot. You are still going to look to try and dominate the ball as much as possible, because the likes of Luis Enrique's sides, they did that. They had a lot of possession. I think it was like 60% and plus in most games. So therefore, you would still look to try and do that. And more so, a depth of 85 does help you in possession, of course. Pressing nice and high up the field, applying a load of pressure to the opposition, forcing them into counters, turnovers, giving the ball back to your players, allowing for you to patiently wait and probe and make sure that you are generating the best potential offensive outlet that you possibly can. But at the same time, you can definitely be counted upon, so make sure you are a bit wary with that. But if you are looking after the ball, you're making the right movements, you're making sure that the players are on the right positions, which they should be, I don't think it can, cause any issues. As for the offense, the build-up play I've set is to slow build-up. Of course, this allows for the centre-backs to show for the ball, as well as the full-backs and even the DM, of course, Busquets. You need him to be able to get on the ball and facilitate the pace of play. At the same time, you will have a slightly slower build-up, so you would be encouraged to use the double tap L1 button to send certain players on runs. Of course, more so your forwards, the likes of Messi, Suárez, and Neymar, they will be encouraged to get in behind, yes, but you still would require them to do so, as well as your fullbacks. You want to make sure that your fullbacks are getting nice and high, so you can interchange with the 1-2 passing, or obviously just double tapping in the direction with the double tap of L1, or what's like the left bump or whatever on Xbox. So, it is what it is. But in terms of the chance creation, now this is why I say it's a very forward dominant system. You're trying to get the ball into the likes of Messi and Neymar and Suárez as much as possible. So therefore, they will also be encouraged to make those more positive offensive runs, getting forward, breaking in between the lines, as well as penetrating the opposition's backline, making sure that they are trying to break into that space that the opposition has left in behind them. At the same time, your entire midfield will also be pushed up and encouraged to attack and support the attack as much as possible. But, you know, it does take away from the quick interchanging 5-yard passes all the time. So you can look to sometimes go a bit longer, or potentially you can look to revert back to how Barca were under the likes of Pep Guardiola, you know, having that very dominant midfield. They did do that, especially against teams that were quite happy to sit back and create a low block. Using that tiki-taka, quick 5-yard interchanging fluid type football, they were able to break down those teams. So therefore, you know, it's a give and take situation, but that's also why we've got different game plans and structures for you to try and set up with. As for the width, I've set it to 60 now. More so with the wing play, it does more or less try to spread the team out a fair amount, but with this side, especially with the front three, they would try and, you know, drift centrally. The likes of Neymar drifting from the left wing inside, the likes of Messi also drifting inside, linking up quite effectively with the midfielders as well as Suárez, allowing for a lot of the width down either flank from the fullback. So more so, I've put it down to the lowest it can possibly go before it becomes like a custom set of tactics and whatnot, but I think it does do a very good job in replicating how both Messi and Suárez and Neymar can drift inside and be very effective. As for the players in the box, I've set it to 3. Of course, not overcommitting too many players. It will be your formidable front 3 getting in and around there, as well as your 1 fullback, 2 fullbacks at times, as well as your midfielders, more or less standing on the edge of the box looking to try and either win the ball back or rotate it into a better opportunity for maybe another person to try and work, and obviously look to try and get a better goal scoring moment. As for the corners and the free kicks, as per always on the channel, I've set it to 4. So, taking a look at the instructions, starting off at the back with Ter Stegen. Of course, he's set to come for crosses and be a sweeper keeper. It goes without saying you are playing a very high line, and to be honest, Ter Stegen is up there with one of the best rated goalkeepers in the world with being a sweeper keeper. So therefore, even at that time, he would be told to be a sweeper keeper, as well as be very aggressive and claim those aerial balls when they are whipped into the box. As for your 2 centre-backs, of course, you've got Martinez and Araujo. Of course, at the time, it was Gerard Piqué, as well as Mateo, or Mathieu. Forgive me, I always butcher names, but very, very good. Underrated, you could say. They are set to their base set of instructions. No real necessity for them to have any structural changes or instruction changes. You more or less will play the ball out to them, and they are both going to be very good on-ball, ball-playing centre-backs, so they can look to try and either spring a pass forward into the forward line, or potentially look to work it into the midfield and more or less play that tiki-taka style 5-yard fluid football. As for your 2 fullbacks, both of them are also set to the same set of instructions. Both are going to be told, join the attack, obviously creating a lot of the width down either flank, the left or the right, as well as overlap. More so to try and, you know, generate a bit more space. Also, the likes of Messi and Alba had a very good connection with the cutback. Obviously, Messi making those late runs into the box, Alba always finding him. So more so, you are trying to replicate that on either flank. As well as for the defensive positioning, you would require them to stick to position. You don't really require them to be too aggressive or get too high up and maybe exploit the structural integrity of the formation. As for the likes of the right-hand side, Dani Alves, he's got the same set of instructions as well. Okay, into your midfield. We've got the likes of Frankie de Jong / Sergio Busquets, of course. For the defensive behavior, it's very similar to the Inter Miami tactics in terms of his role. So if you have seen those, I'm more or less going to regurgitate that. But in this role, he was told to keep the defensive structure and shape of the formation at hand, so therefore the defensive behavior should be set to balance. He's not going to drift wide or, you know, be a zonal type player. He's more or less going to keep his position and make sure that if there is a ball intercepting opportunity in and around him, he will go for it, but otherwise, more so, structurally integral to the formation at hand. As for the attacking support, wasn't ever one to get forward and attack and show his attacking prowess. He was more so looking to rotate the play, rotate possession, run the midfield as best as he possibly can, and therefore you would require your DM to stay back while attacking. As for the interceptions, like I mentioned earlier, he's not going to chase after the ball, so therefore I've set him to conservative. And then finally, deep lying playmaker. It is a necessity. You would require, especially in possession, building out from the back, you would require him to drop a bit deeper, drop into little pockets of space, collect the ball, and then obviously look to progress it forward. Whether it's into the midfield or into the forward line, you would still expect him to be able to do a very good job, which he obviously did. Probably one of the best, if not the best, DM of all time. As for the defensive positioning, cover the center. You don't require him, again, to drift into the left back or the right back positions. you more so would require him and expect him to cover the central area, shield the back two as efficiently as he possibly could, which was very efficient, and therefore cover the center best reflects and replicates his role going forward. As for your two number 8s, of course, this could either be Xavi or Iniesta or Rakitic, of course. So both number 8s have the same role going forward as well. So for the attacking support, stay back while attacking. You don't require them to make those overlapping runs surpassing either of the front three. You would more or less expect them to stay more central and more or less supply the forwards with those killer balls. As for the support on crosses, just like I mentioned before, because you'll only have 3 players in and around the box, you would expect your front 3 to always be those 3 players. So therefore, you would tell your 2 number 8s to stay back or stay on the edge of the box for the crosses, expecting them to, if the ball does land back at their feet, they're going to rotate it and find a better opportunity. As for the interceptions, it's set to normal, and then this is where things get a bit spicy. The defensive positioning as well as the offensive positioning is set to drift wide and cover the wing. So you would expect your number 8s to cover those wider areas as much as possible, as well as try and drift into those wider areas to try and either support the attack from those wider sections of the field, or potentially, if the likes of a Messi or a Neymar drift inside, you would expect either number 8s to obviously take up their position in those wider regions, either recycling play in those wider sections of the field, or potentially just allowing for the likes of Messi or Neymar to have that free role on the inside to try and link up a bit more efficiently with the likes of Suárez. As for the other number 8, as you'll see here, he's got the same role as well. So, moving on to both the Messi and Neymar role. They both have the same roles, I will say that. They are both allowed to drift inside, flaunt their offensive abilities as much and as best as they possibly could. And that's more or less why this team gelled so well, because even though the midfield departments had been not taken apart completely, but they were given a lesser role in how this team would win games, the likes of Messi and Neymar and their superior talents, they were able to just take the game by the scruff of the neck and run it. So, more so, you are looking to try and do this. The likes of Messi will come back on defense, but this is more so to try and make sure that he does have a slightly deeper starting position at the same time, looking for him to get on the ball a bit more, at a deeper rate, drive with it, link up a bit more with the midfield as well. As for the chance creation and the support runs, it's set to come short and free roam. Of course, this will allow him to drift inside a bit more. Like we said, you want him to drift from those wider areas slightly further in, allowing him to be a bit more creative. Also, pulling players out of position, allowing for the effective overlap of either a Dani Alves or potentially an Alba on the left-hand side. As for the interceptions, it's set to conservative. Of course, the front 3 didn't overly or aggressively, come back on defense and help out. So they were quite happy to hang slightly higher up the field and wait for the counter-attacking opportunity, which essentially was a very effective defensive behavior, because essentially what would happen is the opposition would then have to leave certain players back because they obviously would not want to be counter-attacked on. So it was a give and take situation, but again, they could also be very aggressive with their counter-pressing situations and look to try and win that ball back. So it is a give and take situation, but more so if you are looking to play out the full course of a game, you wouldn't expect your front 3 to do much defensive work. As for the support on crosses, you want Messi to be able to drift in and out of the box, so therefore a balanced approach best suits him. As you can see here for the likes of Neymar, there is only one real major tweak, and that is the defensive support is set to basic. So yes, also choosing whether he can drop a bit deeper. In certain moments he did, but other times looking to hang slightly higher up the field and be very aggressive with a potential counter-attack. As for the likes of my man Suárez, of course, he's got a very balanced and mixed approach, so therefore it's a balanced width, allowing for him to either drift into those wider areas of the field, allowing him to open up a bit more space for a Messi or a Neymar to attack more centrally, or potentially he could be the more central figure point of the attack and take up those central roles. As for the attacking support, you would expect him to have a whole host of different abilities, sometimes playing as a false nine, dropping off the back line, other times being a very aggressive physical target man, and then other times looking to make those runs in behind. And more naturally, your front 3 will all tend to do this. With the forward runs being set to beyond, they will sometimes, or if the opportunity is there, make those runs in behind, waiting for a potential long ball over the top from one of your fullbacks or one of your centre backs, or maybe even your DM, or potentially just looking to exploit the space in behind. At the same time, with a Suárez, you don't expect him to have too much of a physical or aggressive nature for the interception, so therefore I've set him to normal. And then finally, for the defensive support, you want him to be the outlet ball, mainly because he is the most physical, and therefore if it does push comes to shove, he can look to back into the opposition and link up very effectively with a Messi or a Neymar on either side of him. Okay, now moving on to the attacking structure that you should potentially look to set up. Now, essentially, it is just a more higher up, more expressive version of the 4-3-3 balance. So, you would mainly look to use this against the teams that are looking to sit a bit deeper, set that low block, and look for you to try and break them down. This will definitely help and assist you in breaking down the opposition. So, taking a look at the 3-4-3 flat, of course, that is the formation that we've gone with. I've made one or two tweaks, and that is more so the two wingers. I've brought them in a bit more, and that helps with the interchangeability more centrally at times. But other than that, there's no major changes to it. So it is one goalkeeper, 3 centre-backs, 2 central midfielders, 2 wider midfielders, 2 wingers, and then of course, 1 striker. So, with the tactics going forward, the tactical vision is still set to wing play. Now, for the defense and the defensive style, it's still going to be set to press after possession loss. Of course, this formation and lineup can leave you a bit more exposed, so you want to be very, very, very aggressive with winning that ball back and how you press very aggressively. So, it is a must that you try and maintain the ball as best as you possibly can. As for the team width, it's still set to 50, but the depth, however, is pressed slightly higher up, now set to 90. So, you are going to be very high up the field, and that does leave the opportunity for a potential counter-attack. But I have faith in the back line. Of course, the likes of PK and Mateo, as well as Busquets, were very good at being able to stave off or make sure that any counter-attacks were killed very early on. Whether it was a quick foul or just a breaker in the play, they were very good at making sure that they were in the way more times than not. So, a very high line, so you need to be wary of that. As for the offense, the build-up play is now set to slow build-up. Of course, it was set to do that before, but the chance creation is set to position. Of course, this will allow you to form those little triangle passages of play, allow you to not have those forwards constantly making those runs in behind, because essentially, if the team or the opposition has set a low block, there's not that much space to try and exploit, so therefore you'll be playing in front of their defense as much as possible, looking for those little interchanging 5-yard passes. This is more so where the tiki-taka elements of Luis Enrique's system comes to life, more so with the possession-based chance creation. As for the width, it's still set to 60, and the players in the box has also increased. You want to try and allow for the likes of Messi, Suárez, and Neymar to have interchanging players in and around them, whether it's a fullback or potentially a central midfielder, making that deep dive into the final third to try and attack. It does cause a lot of, I wanted to say creation, no, friction and panic between the defenders of the opposition. So you are trying to more or less create that with the quick interchanging passing in and around their box. As for the corners and the free kicks, of course it's more attacking, but it's still set to 4. So let's move on to the instructions. Okay, so for the instructions, to Stegen, he's got the same role going forward. You don't really require him to change too much. You are playing a very high line, so it would still require you to be a sweeper keeper, and of course you would still expect him to be the best at claiming those aerial balls when they are whipped into the box. As for the defenders, of course, your 2 wider central defenders, they've got the same role, and that's their base instructions, whereas the likes of Busquets / Frankie de Jong, of course, a DM slotting in as that third centre-back. So you can more or less drive with the ball at his feet higher up the field and look to try and link up play very effectively. You can definitely do that, but it can leave you a bit more exposed. But for the instructions I would set for him is still conservative interceptions as well as step up, and this will allow him to step up into the midfield every now and then. As for your 2 midfielders, again, they both have the same set of instructions. Stay back while attacking and stay on the edge of the box. But because you have pushed the players in the box slightly higher up to 8, it will sometimes encourage them to be able to break into that attacking third. But more times than not, structurally, they'll look to stand on the edge of the box and rotate and facilitate the pace of play. As for the interceptions, I set it to normal, and then finally, cover the center and stick to position. You don't require them to drop into the little half spaces or whatnot. More so, stay central, rotate play, find the best possible attacking opportunity. As you can see here, the likes of the left-hand side has the same role and instructions. As for your 2 fullbacks, of course, you want them to be able to stay wide, hug the touchlines, generate a lot of space between the lines for the likes of a Neymar, a Messi, and a Suárez, and your midfielders as well. So therefore, stay wide is going to be essential, as well as getting behind, constantly looking to try and penetrate the opposition's backline with those runs in behind. Of course, the switch of play was always a thing, whether it was Messi switching it to Neymar, or Messi switching it to Alba and vice versa, allowing for that nice combination play and allowing for them to be able to exploit the opposition as best as they possibly could, whether it was with a sneaky cutback opportunity or maybe a good cross fight into the box. As for the supports on crosses, you want them to have a balanced approach, so this can allow them to sometimes be able to break into that attacking third and maybe pop up at the back post for a potential tap-in. We've seen that countless amounts of time where the likes of a Barcelona fullback pops up at the back post and they score the goal. As for the interceptions, you don't really want them to be too aggressive, so therefore normal is best, as well as the positioning freedom. Of course, you can be somewhat hyper exposed, so you don't want them to have a free roam role. Hug the touchline, keep the structural integrity of this formation at hand, and make sure that they are providing the width. So therefore, stick to position is going to be very essential. As you will see here for the likes of Cancelo/Alves, he's got the same set of instructions. With the Messi and Neymar roles, yet again, they have got the same set of instructions, and they are exactly the same. So basic defensive support, so sometimes choosing to drop a bit deeper, other times choosing to hang slightly high up the field. At the same time, free roaming come short is going to be essential, especially if you are playing that possession-based brand of football where everybody in and around them have a very structured approach, but they have the freedom to more or less drift into those little half spaces, so you want them to be able to do that and not anybody else. So therefore, come short and free roam is going to be essential, as well as normal interceptions. Now obviously before it was set to conservative, but because you are trying to maintain this high octane, high pressure style of football, if you do lose the ball, you would expect your forward to show a bit more of a prowess and to try and win it back. So therefore, I think normal best suits them, as well as the support on crosses being set to balance, of course, drifting in and out of the box, making sure that they are trying to help facilitate the pace of play, as well as obviously score those opportunities that are created. As you can see here for the likes of Neymar, he's got the same set of instructions as well. Finally, onto the likes of Suárez. Again, the same role going forward. You don't really require him to do too much, apart from the fact that the defensive support is set to basic. So before it was set to stay forward, but this time you don't really require him to stay forward, because more times than not with this style of football, you will be in possession more times than not, so therefore you can expect him to sometimes drop a bit deeper, link up with the midfield and whatnot, and more so I think a basic defensive support does allow him to do this. So moving on to the defensive instructions. Now, as you'll see here, we've got the likes of Ferran Torres, Rafinha, as well as Lewandowski as our front three, but the likes of Rafinha, who is taking up the Messi role, he is more central. So when they would set up with this defensive unit, of course, it was very hard to break down, very compact, very well worked, well organized, well drilled. But you would still require an outlet, and therefore the likes of Messi would take up a more central role, dropping a bit deeper, collecting the ball when it is won back, and then looking to progress it forward. Of course, this would then flush Suárez into that wider right channel, and that's more or less why I've stashed Lewandowski, #Suárez, in that wider right channel, as well as Neymar/Torres in the wider left channel. More so, the likes of Rafinha is going to be playing as a centre forward with the setup and these sets of instructions. So yes. So as you can see here, for the formation at hand, it is still a 4-3-3 holding, but many structural changes. 1, the DM is a lot deeper. 2, the 2 central midfielders are a lot deeper as well. And then of course we have also created the centre forward role, dropping the striker slightly deeper as well. This helps up with the link-up abilities. So therefore it is 1 goalkeeper, 2 centre-backs, 2 full-backs, 1 DM, 2 central midfielders, 1 centre forward, and then of course 2 wingers. Okay, so moving on to the tactics. Now there are going to be quite a few tactical tweaks, but starting off with the tactical vision, it is still set to wing play. As for the defensive style is set to drop back. Of course, this does help create that shape and that structure that is obviously going to be very hard to break down. The team width is set to a very compact 25, although it could be more compact, but I don't think they were, burning under Sean Dyche. I think they still had some space between the lines, but nonetheless, it was still very hard to break down. As for the depth, however, they've still set up not the highest of lines, but it's going to be a mid-block, so they can still look to counter and progress the ball at a slightly higher rate if they do win it back. As for the offense, the build-up play is set to fast build-up as well as forward runs, of course. Now, moving and progressing on from the slower build-up to the fast build-up, it is a necessity, especially with the counter-attacking opportunities that you will be creating with this formation and these tactics going forward. But at the same time, the forward runs is also necessary because you want the likes of Suárez and Neymar and Messi to be running in transition, being hit on the break, trying to exploit the amount of space that the opposition is leaving them behind. Because essentially, with this formation, you'll mainly use it up against a team that would also look to try and dominate the ball, or if you are under the cosh and you are feeling a lot of pressure, you can look to sit back, soak up some pressure, and then allow for your forwards to dictate how the game will be played out, essentially on the counter attack and on the break. As for the width, it's now set to 75, slightly wider, looking to try and stretch as much of the play as possible, looking to try and have and generate as many spaces and gaps for the likes of a Messi and Neymar and Suárez to try and work into. As for the players in the box, it is set back to 6, more so a conservative approach. So if you do have the ball and you haven't really changed back to the balanced approach or the more attacking style of football, more so you can still have midfielders as well as fullbacks looking to try and support on the edge of the area. As for the corners and the free kicks, as always, still set to 4. So, taking a look at the instructions, starting off at the back, we've got our first major tweak, and that is Ter Stegen. He is now set to a balanced approach, so not looking to run off of his line. Obviously, you can set it to be a sweeper keeper, but it seems a bit unnecessary for me. You would more or less expect him with this style of play to make sure that he is staying on his line, he is making those saves, he is looking to be a bit more of a traditional base goalkeeper. But as for the saving on crosses, it is still set to come for crosses. You would still expect him to be able to command his area, be very dominant, claim those aerial balls when they are fired into the box. Onto your 2 centre backs now, of course. They are set to their base set of instructions. You don't really require or need anything too different from them. As for your 2 fullbacks, however, the attacking runs is set to balance, so yes, if the opportunity is there, fly down the flank, support the attack, get forward as much as possible, but more so, this formation is set up to soak up pressure, allow for the likes of Messi, Suárez, and Neymar to try and flourish, so therefore you would require your fullbacks to be very, very well aware of their positional awareness, and therefore, structurally, they don't always need to get forward. As for the interceptions, it is set to normal, as well as when they do get forward, you would still expect them to make those overlapping runs. As for the defensive positioning, you would expect him to step up and be a bit more aggressive and imposing, getting a bit tighter to their opposing player and make sure that they don't have as much space to either fire shots or, try and generate any offensive outlets. As you can see here for the left-hand side, he's got the same role as well. As for the likes of the Busquets role, again, no major changes to it. Cover the center, be the deep-lying playmaker, of course, conservative interceptions, stay back while attacking. You don't really require or need to change too much with him. He is going to man the central area of that defense, essentially. As you'll see here for the 2 number 8s, of course, stay back while attacking is down the edge of the box, of course, looking to rotate play, as well as cover the center and then stick to position. You don't really require them to drift into those wider areas now, especially with the fullback staying in position as well as the counter-attacking opportunities being there. You would more or less require them to stay central in case the ball is turned over and it comes back comes back towards your defensive line. So therefore, you would expect them to remain structurally sound in the formation at hand. As you'll see here for the right-hand side, the same set of instructions have been applied. As for the likes of Messi, now with this role, of course, going back to that Pep Guardiola style Messi, but not essentially that. So for the support runs, of course he is playing as a centre forward, but for the support runs, a balanced width is required, allowing him to drift in and out of those central areas. Playing as a false 9 is going to be essential, allowing him to pick up the ball and drive at the opposition's backline is going to be prime and peak Messi, to be fair. As for the interceptions, it is set to conservative still, as well as the defensive support, I've set it to basic, allowing him to drop a bit deeper, get on the ball, and then obviously look to try and transition, or potentially, if the counter is there and the likes of Busquets or so on has the ball, he will look to stay slightly further forward and look for the ball in behind. Moving on to your 2 other forwards, of course, the likes of Suárez and not Messi, Neymar, they are told to stay forward. Now, this does help on the counter, having men forward, allowing them to link up very efficiently and effectively when making that quick counter. As for the chance creation, I've set it to a balanced width, so not always hugging the touchline, sometimes allowing them to cut inside, and this is more or less where the interchangeability happens, especially with the likes of Messi drifting in and out of those central areas. As for the support runs, again, it is set to a balanced approach, so sometimes getting in behind, other times looking to come a bit shorter, link up a bit more effectively, and allowing for maybe the other 2 players to more so get forward. As for the interceptions, it is set to normal, and then finally, the support on crosses is set to get into the box. As you'll see here for the likes of Neymar, he has got the same set of instructions and roles going forward. So there we go, people. That is how I would replicate Barcelona's MSN treble-winning Luis Enrique tactics. Of course. As always, if you have enjoyed this, hit that like button down below, subscribe if you are new, leave a comment, that would be absolutely fantastic. And out of 10, I would give these tactics a solid 10. I think that's the second 10 I've ever given. They are very, very good. Like, they are very good. So, a solid 10 out of 10 is fantastic. And, yes, until the next time, my dudes, I hope you have enjoyed this Throwback Thursday. I will see you guys tomorrow.